Folks, looks like Donald Trump is actually serious about having Canada become the 51st state of the U.S. And look, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he was caught on a hot mic stating that Donald Trump is not joking about the suggestion. And then Trump just confirmed it himself, actually. And in other news also, IRS agents could actually be sent to work on border security. We thought he was joking also, but he's not. The Department of Homeland Security is now seeking to deputize IRS officers to assist in the deportations of illegal immigrants. And meanwhile, Trump has now pulled the security clearances of several key figures, including former President Joe Biden himself, as well as New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg, New York Attorney General Letitia James, and a lot of others. And this is as Trump is enacting mass firings kind of across the board right now. And we're also now seeing a key investigation now starting. Anthony Fauci is now being investigated at the state level, not the federal level, for his role in the COVID-19 response. I'll be talking about these stories and more today, so let's jump into it. Now, first off, folks, look, I thought he was joking. Maybe some of you thought he was joking. It turns out he is not. Donald Trump looks like he's actually serious about having Canada become the 51st U.S. state. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he was caught on a hot mic stating that Trump is not joking about the suggestion, and Donald Trump actually confirmed this as well during a recent interview. Now, first off, Trump made the suggestion on this during a private conversation with Justin Trudeau before the presidential inauguration. You might remember the time Trump had floated the idea of tariffs on Canada, Mexico, China, which have now been rolled out, by the way, over the problems of drug trafficking and illegal immigration. Now, that caused shockwaves through the Canadian system. Trudeau and others were saying Canada, they basically won't be able to survive that kind of tariff. Trudeau flew to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Donald Trump, and afterwards, it was reported that Trump had jokingly suggested that, well, you know, if Canada can't get by without this massive trade deficit, they can't survive this, and maybe they should just become the 51st state, and Justin Trudeau could become the governor. And Trump has since continued to mention this. A lot of us maybe thought he was joking. I thought he was joking. It looks like he's actually not joking. Justin Trudeau was just caught on a hot mic saying as much during the Canada-U.S. Economic Summit in Toronto just last week. Watch this.
Trump has it in mind that one of the easiest ways of doing that is absorbing our country. And it is a real thing. In my conversation with him.
Now, look, basically, according to Trudeau, Trump has suggested that given the trade deficits and given his plan for tariffs on Canada, the easiest way forward, the least painful method for Canada to get out of this is to become a U.S. state. And look, since then, Donald Trump himself also directly confirmed this during an interview with Fox News host Bret Baier that aired before the Super Bowl. Watch this.
He said that your wish for Canada to be the 51st state is a, quote, real thing. Is it a real thing?
Yeah, it is. I think Canada would be much better off being a 51st state because we lose $200 billion a year with Canada, and I'm not going to let that happen. It's too much. Why are we paying $200 billion a year, essentially in subsidy to Canada? Now, if they're a 51st state, I don't mind doing it.
I guess we'll have to wait and see if that actually happens. Trump has continuously been bringing this option up and even stating this move could benefit Canada by making it more secure from a military standpoint. Canadians, for their part, they don't seem too keen on the idea. Maybe not yet. Maybe they'll have a change of heart as the tariffs move forward. We will see. In other news now, it appears that Trump was also not joking about sending IRS agents to go work on border security. The Department of Homeland Security is right now seeking to deputize IRS officers to assist in deportations and investigations of illegal immigrants. Now, first, let me tell you how this whole thing started. A couple weeks ago, it was reported that Trump was just joking about this. It was about the more than 80,000 additional IRS agents who were hired under the Biden administration. You might remember Biden, of course, hired all these additional IRS agents. They were giving them gun training classes and so on. And a lot of Americans were wondering, well, what are those guns for? Are they going to come raid my home? What's the IRS doing? Well, it turns out those IRS agents were kind of being sicked on the average American, and then Trump came out with kind of a new solution for it. Everyone laughed at the idea. Trump saying he's going to send the IRS agents to go and work on border security. Watch this.
I immediately halted the hiring of any new IRS agents. They hired or tried to hire 88,000 new workers to go after you, and we're in the process of developing a plan to either terminate all of them or maybe we'll move them to the border. I think we're going to move them to the border. Well, they're allowed to carry guns. They're so strong on guns, but these people are allowed to carry guns, so we'll probably move them to the border.
So it turns out that, yet again, Trump was not actually joking. It's now being reported the Department of Homeland Security is in fact deputizing IRS agents and is going to move them to focus on border security. Wall Street Journal had this. It said the Department of Homeland Security has asked Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent to deputize some law enforcement workers, including IRS criminal investigators, to assist in immigration enforcement, according to documents viewed by the Wall Street Journal. In a memo dated February 7th, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem requested Bessent provide agents who would help investigate financial flows involving human trafficking networks and businesses that employ illegal immigrants. Meaning if you've been hiring illegal immigrants, well, those IRS agents who were going to be targeting the average American might be investigating you. Now it says the agents could help arrest, detain, and transport people. And the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS's Criminal Investigation Division, or IRSCI, has 2,290 special agents, according to its most recent annual report. And that is up 10% since 2022. This is not the 80,000, but still quite a few. And notes the tax agency has been adding enforcement staff, including criminal investigators, since the then Democratic-controlled Congress voted in 2022 to expand the IRS and give it more resources. Now, look, when it comes to capabilities and such, it does seem the IRS could be well positioned to find things like money networks tied in with human trafficking and illicit businesses, or if people are hiring illegal immigrants, or if illegal immigrants are getting, duplicate or fake social security numbers to work in the U.S. A lot of these things could be looked into. And if they're going to be sent to help arrest, detain, and even transport people as well, then it could put those new skill sets they were given under the Biden administration to other uses, right? Now, look, in other news, Trump has also now removed the security clearances for several key figures. This even includes former President Joe Biden. Trump made the announcement on Truth Social. Let me show you what he said. Trump wrote, quote, "There is no need for Joe Biden to continue receiving access to classified information. Therefore, we are immediately revoking Joe Biden's security clearances and stopping his daily intelligence briefings." He set his precedent in 2021 when he instructed the intelligence community, the IC, to stop the 45th president of the United States, me, Trump, from accessing details on national security. It's a bit of tit for tat here, right? Biden did it to Trump. Trump's now saying, well, you do it to me, I'll do it to you. And Trump says a courtesy provided to former presidents. Trump was denied that. Now he's doing the same to Biden. Now he notes as well, the Hur reports, those are the special counsel investigations into Biden, the Hur report revealed that Biden suffers from poor memory and even in his prime could not be trusted with sensitive information. He said, "I will always protect our national security." And then Trump says, "Joe, you're fired. Make America great again." That's your president, folks. Now look, apparently that already went into effect. It did so immediately. But what's really interesting right now is that this appears to be part of a broader trend. This is a pattern we're seeing right now from Trump, and we can try to make sense of this. Now look, just after that, Donald Trump also revoked the security clearances of a lot of other people who are working to prosecute him. This includes New York District Attorney Alvin Bragg. It includes New York Attorney General Letitia James. And it goes further than this. Trump also revoked the security clearances of former Secretary of State Antony Blinken and also former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. And remember also, before all of this, Trump also revoked the security clearances of the 51 former intelligence officials who signed that letter ahead of the 2020 election saying that the Hunter Biden documents and other findings were all just Russian disinformation. None of it was true. Turned out it was true, and they lied to the American people and very likely impacted the outcome of the election. People did say they would have voted otherwise had those documents been out and they knew they were true. But also, Trump already fired over 1,000 Biden employees, including many you may know, like retired General Mark Milley, who received a sweeping pardon from Biden shortly before he left office. And look, now in terms of the seriousness of this, on one side, look, it sends a message, right? On the surface, it looks like retribution. Trump's going after the people who attacked him. But on the other side, losing that security clearance can affect the careers of former officials, especially if they try to go to work in like defense contracting or advisory jobs or many other things. It kind of makes them about as informed as any other person, right? And from Trump's side, this could also prevent things like information leaks or, other possible security issues from people he already regards as potential threats, because in his eyes, these people were attacking him. In his eyes, these people were trying to target him using the legal system. During his presidency, many of them undermined his presidency. In terms of that letter from the 51 former officials, he regards them as people who interfered with our elections. And you might remember also during Trump's first term in office, what was one of his biggest problems? It was leakers. It was people releasing information. It was people talking to the press under the table and things like that. And so he's kind of cutting off all these figures from getting classified briefings and documents and other key information that they could use to basically do the same thing to him they did last time. And this also means that some of his more outspoken critics, right, the people who kind of have a track record of going after him, these people are going to be a lot less informed of what's really taking place, meaning for media, they're about as informed as the average person. They don't have any more or any less for the most part. And look, there's even more to this. Remember what Trump also did as one of his early moves, right? One of his first moves was he removed about 17 inspectors general at various government agencies. Now, Democrats accused him of violating oversight laws by doing that. What do you mean you were eliminating the jobs of people who are supposed to hold these departments accountable? Who's going to hold them accountable now? On Trump's side, of course, he says, well, they weren't really doing that before either. And Trump is, of course, now expected to appoint new people to those positions, but likely these individuals will be more in line with his administration, meaning they will not be acting as kind of opposition within these departments. He's going to put people in who will likely support his actions. That includes notably the DOGE department as it cleans house, and as he works to also audit and reform a lot of these government agencies. On that point, he is facing some legal pushback now. People who were fired are suing him. Judges in Rhode Island and elsewhere, they're blocking him. It seems that Trump's kind of defying a lot of that right now. I mean, it's going to be a pretty tense legal battle we're going to be watching now because some judges are trying to block Trump from doing what he wants to do, and Trump is just not listening to them. And we'll see whether he has the legal high ground or they do, because this is going to get interesting. But also back to kind of the cleaning out of everything. Trump has also been working to get rid of the various bureaucrats who are allegedly working against his executive orders from within the agencies. Remember, day one, Trump signs like 200 executive orders, and every day since then he's signing new executive orders. And one of the things the DOGE department, right, Elon Musk was saying is when they wanted to find where to start with their investigations and what they should look into, what they did was looked at who was violating the executive orders the most. The biggest one, he said, was USAID. And on top of this, Trump is also, well, After going after these organizations, it was reported that around 60 of these individuals were fired from USAID for this exact reason. They were defying Trump's orders, and these were kind of like middle-level bureaucrats, right? But back to people losing their security clearances. The inspectors general getting fired, employees like, places like USAID getting asked to work from home like they requested, while DOGE inspects the spending and activities that have been going on, and also the clearing out of many bureaucrats who are trying to stop all of this. Well, Trump also took some interesting moves pretty early on. We're like 3 weeks into this, folks. But this included a pause on communications within the federal health agencies. Suddenly they cannot issue reports. Suddenly they cannot talk like they used to. This happened just a couple days after Trump was sworn in. The Daily Mail, January 22nd, said this. It said, Donald Trump has ordered a communications blackout at America's federal health agencies, according to reports. It said the CDC, the FDA, HHS, Health and Human Services, and the NIH, you might remember that, have all been told to pause external communications, including publishing scientific reports, updating websites, or issuing health advisories. Suddenly, they cannot give health alerts. They can't tell you to work from home or put a face mask on. All of that was suddenly put on hold. Now, it notes as well, it is not entirely unusual for incoming administrations to pause external communications temporarily, meaning this is kind of normal to an extent, at least that is. And they note which may be done to help newly appointed officials understand the scope of information that is being released. But it adds, some said that if the pause lasts longer than a week or two, then it could be seen as concerning, they say. So maybe nothing to see here. Maybe it's part of a broader pattern we're watching right now. But maybe we're also now seeing something much broader taking place. And I think if we take the whole picture into consideration, it looks like something much broader is taking place. We're starting to see investigations starting of key individuals, including on the health side, and especially with the various figures who were involved in investigating criminal cases against Donald Trump and his supporters. Something bigger is going on, folks. One of the bigger cases with this was the new probe that just opened into the prosecutors behind the many cases around January 6th. Epoch Times said this. It said a U.S. prosecutor said that on January 27th, that he's investigating why federal prosecutors brought a felony obstruction charge against hundreds of people involved in the January 6, 2021 breach of the U.S. Capitol. Ed Martin, interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, in an internal email ordered a review of the matter, directing employees to hand over related files, emails, and other documents, meaning all those investigators are now under investigation. In addition to this, the Trump administration also fired the prosecutors who were involved in the January 6 cases. And it's possible a very large number of FBI agents or employees could also be fired for their roles in the January 6 cases as well. Every single agent, every single employee of the agency, they were asked to fill out a questionnaire of any form of their involvement with the various Jan 6 cases, and they had to submit that to the Justice Department. And around 5,000 of them, that's a lot of people, 5,000 said they were involved in the Jan 6 cases in one way or another, meaning a lot of the FBI was focused on that. And also, look, it's possible there could be investigations into whether the Democrat-led January 6 committee really deleted documents before Republicans took control of the House. Now, remember the Jan 6 committee, technically committees have to be bipartisan. Republicans had their people set up to be part of it. Nancy Pelosi rejected those people, and then they handpicked two individuals who were kind of Republicans but had voted previously with Democrats, including on the impeachment of Donald Trump, meaning they kind of handpicked people who seemed to be interested in voting along the same lines as they would. Now, when it comes to the deleting of documents, this has been largely kind of written off as just another conspiracy theory. They deny it. But if it is true, it would be a crime. It would be illegal for them to do that. And now it's being alleged that someone did in fact delete over 100 files before the Republicans took control of the House. And meaning the Republicans also took control of the Jan 6 committee, right? And that, along with other potential issues with the Jan 6 committee, well, those are all now up for investigation. And on this point as well, we're also seeing investigations into people who are prosecuting Donald Trump. The Department of Justice, for example, just ordered Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis to turn over any communications that she may have possibly had with former special counsel Jack Smith in regards to the prosecutions against Trump and many people around him. And it looks like this is actually part of a broader inquiry from the Trump administration. What the Trump administration wants to know, what Trump continues to say actually happened. He says there was coordination between the state prosecutions and the federal prosecutions. Trump keeps alleging that basically the state AGs and so on, that they were getting their orders from the executive branch, from the federal government. And if that were to have happened, well, that could be a serious violation when it comes to the independence of the state cases. And this also ties into whether this was political attempts to interfere with Trump when he was on the campaign trail. That is how this will very likely be framed. And so they're currently investigating, well, did that actually happen? Trump says it did. We may soon know. Now, look, this also follows another move from Trump. What did he do? Well, he fired the various Justice Department lawyers who were involved in investigating him and also looking into those around him. And this included people who worked under former special counsel Jack Smith. And again, Smith himself appears to be under investigation, and again, his involvement possibly with the state prosecutions. They deny it, of course. They say they didn't do any of that. Trump says otherwise. We may find out soon. Also, look, the investigations are also ongoing, and they're also turning to other issues, including Trump is getting information on the assassination attempts against him. New York Post said this: President Donald Trump ordered the Secret Service on Friday to provide him every bit of information about his two would-be assassins, and actually maybe even other potential ones. They're now suggesting that Secret Service had actually downed a drone that was trailing one of his cars when he was on the campaign trail. It seems there were actually other assassination attempts that we weren't told about. We know, for example, that Iran was trying to kill him. We know that Trump was asking Joe Biden for presidential level protection because he was saying that includes the international data which he would have needed to protect himself against Iran. And he was saying, why was the office of the president not doing things to go after Iran when they were publicly trying to kill one of the leading presidential candidates in the United States? That was a real serious question that was raised. And Trump is now saying he wants all of this information. He said, quote, "I'm entitled to know," he told the Post. And he said, "I want to find out about the two assassins. Why did one guy have 6 cell phones? And why did the other guy have foreign apps? No more holding back because of Biden," Trump said. He added, "I'm entitled to know, and they held it back long enough. No excuses." Now it notes as well, 6 cell phones were allegedly found in the car of Ryan Routh, the 59-year-old suspect in the second assassination attempt on Trump last September at Trump International Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida. Why does anybody have 6 cell phones, right? Why was he having all these suspicious meetings, by the way? And notes another person, right? The other assassin, attempted assassin, Thomas Crooks, 19 years old, shot Trump in the ear at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania last July. And it notes Trump National Security Advisor, former Representative Michael Waltz, has questioned why a teenager would need to use multiple encrypted foreign apps. Good question, right? Now, we still don't know too much about the first assassination attempt, right? Crooks in particular. There were also a couple people pushing for investigations into the very many security failures that led to that attempt, which also came so close that a bullet hit Trump's ear, and one supporter at the event was even killed by gunfire. Why was that able to happen? Why was it allowed to go so far? Why did Secret Service not fire on the individual when they saw him with a gun pointed at the president, or, former president and one of the leading candidates for the election at the time? Why did they not fire first? What were the rules of engagement? Were those changed? That's a good question, right? We may soon know. And we're also now seeing a key investigation also now starting. Anthony Fauci is now being investigated at the state level, not the federal level, for his role in the COVID-19 response. I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break, so don't go anywhere. I'll be back in less than 1 minute.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. Anthony Fauci is now being investigated at the state level, multiple states in fact, for his role in all the COVID-19 response protocols. And look, right now, Fauci, he was pardoned by Biden shortly before Biden left office. But that presidential pardon, even though it was pretty sweeping, it only applies at the federal level. What does that mean? Well, it means that states can technically still prosecute him and at the very least investigate him. Now, Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrell wrote this. She said, I've joined my colleagues in requesting information on Dr. Fauci's role in the COVID-19 response. And she added, his shocking pardon by Joe Biden does not prohibit any state-level investigations or legal proceedings. And she adds that Louisiana will follow the evidence. Now, in a post on the Attorney General's website, she gives more details on why they're bringing this case. What is the legal ground for this, right? And she cites a congressional report that actually lays out some potential issues. Here's what it says. This is from the official Louisiana Office of the Attorney General website, and it says this. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Murrell joined South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson and a coalition of state attorneys general in an investigation into Dr. Anthony Fauci's role in the COVID-19 pandemic response, demanding accountability for alleged mismanagement, misleading statements, and suppression of scientific debate. It adds that in a letter to Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune, the attorneys general commend ongoing congressional efforts to uncover misconduct and request state-level cooperation in pursuing any violation of state laws. And they note on the congressional report, these are some of the key findings. It says this includes, quote, origins of COVID-19. Evidence suggests Dr. Fauci worked to discredit the lab leak theory despite mounting evidence supporting it. It says misleading Congress on NIH funding. Dr. Fauci allegedly provided false testimony regarding NIH-funded gain-of-function research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It also says NIH oversight failures. The NIH reportedly mismanaged taxpayer funds by failing to properly oversee grants to EcoHealth Alliance, which funneled funding to the Wuhan lab in China. It also says, quote, suppression of scientific dissent. Prominent scientists who raised concerns about vaccine risks were allegedly silenced, limiting public awareness of potential side effects. Now, again, these are the key points that they allege justifies this state-level investigation in many states. This, again, will apply to state law. If the individual states have laws that they believe are violated by these red flags that are being raised, well, we could see some state-level charges. Dr. Fauci, he has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. And he alleges that this is kind of just politicized prosecution. He also alleges that the reports on him have resulted in multiple threats on the lives of himself and his family members. And remember also, despite those threats that he alleges he's received, this comes on the heels of other Trump moves against Dr. Fauci, including eliminating his security detail. Fauci had a very large security detail that was being funded. Trump eliminated the funding for that, meaning Fauci has to pay for it himself. But also just recently, other things as well. The DOGE department, Elon Musk, the investigations they're doing, the DOGE department has announced they got rid of plans for a Fauci museum exhibit, and that Fauci museum exhibit was set to cost $182 million. The plan was discarded by the Department of Health and Human Services. No more museum exhibit, at least for the next 4 years probably. And also on the topic of DOGE and cost cutting and investigations, well, the White House has said that the amount is now in the billions of dollars. Epoch Times said this: after 3 weeks, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, has made over $1 billion in cuts, according to the number from the White House. And some of the biggest savings reckoned by the White House, well, it says it stems from the cancellation of more than 100 contracts related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. And it says Trump's day one executive orders included one seeking the end in DEI in the federal government. And it says the White House estimates those cancellations alone, just the DEI stuff, saved over $1 billion. It notes that DOGE also ended a $748 million contract for a new embassy in South Sudan. Smaller cuts hit subscriptions for the news outlets like Politico and others, right? From NASA, for example, $500,000, $26 million in contracts for executive coaching and strategic communication. And notes as well that DOGE's X account unveiled almost $1 billion in additional cuts on the evening of February 10th. Now, like, it's actually getting to the point now where Trump is suggesting that, hey, maybe we don't even need to, maybe we don't even need to cut things to cut taxes. Maybe the U.S. deficit isn't even being caused by a lot of the stuff we thought it was. Maybe the deficit can actually be eliminated just by eliminating fraud and misuse and people stealing money from the American taxpayers and all this other crazy stuff we're funding. Maybe he can just free up and get us out of debt by just cutting the fat. That's what he's now suggesting. And look, also there's more to come. There's still a lot of time left on the DOGE department, and they claim they've already uncovered, even like Medicare, Medicaid, $100 billion in possible misused funds. And even on the lower end of that, they're saying it's at least $50 billion in misuse. Maybe people just defrauding the system. We will find out soon, maybe. There's a lot going on right now with legal cases kind of firing back and forth. Trump is just openly ignoring some of those judges trying to stop him from doing this. He's saying they're out of their jurisdiction. It's going to get interesting, folks. Get ready for the legal battle because that is now beginning. That said, hit the like button, leave a comment. Let's jump into some questions. All right, let's see here. All right, California gal, you're saying, but what can these investigations on Fauci result in? They can result in state-level charges. And there is legal precedent to this. Remember, folks, for example, Steve Bannon. Remember, before Donald Trump left office back, 2021, he pardoned Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, he does, War Room and so on, right? I've been on Steve Bannon's show multiple times. Steve Bannon was pardoned by Trump. Steve Bannon, at the federal level, the investigations against him stopped, but Steve Bannon is still being investigated and prosecuted at the state level for various things. Now, Trump and his allies allege that all of that is basically politicized justice, that it's not real justice. They're picking and choosing who they're going after based on, based on where you are in that political spectrum. That's the allegation. They deny it, of course, but that's the allegation. Trump is kind of doing the same thing now, let's be honest, right? Trump is going after a lot of people who investigated him. He's going after a lot of people who he alleges were part of that system. His argument, because other people, the other side is now saying politicized justice. Trump's argument is saying these are people who were abusing the system. These are people who were committing, crimes while going after the political enemies, and he's just holding them to account. And so now you have both sides saying politicized justice. But back to the point, Anthony Fauci is being investigated at the state level. If they find he was in violation of state law, he can still face state-level charges. Now, typically, state-level charges are not as serious as federal charges. Oftentimes, that can result in kind of a smaller jail term, not like federal prison, but jail. That can also result usually in just big fines. But I think the real reason they're doing this is because they want to carry out investigations. They want to hold them to account. And a lot of people say that a lot of the policies we saw under COVID, we don't want to see them again. We don't want to see the censorship again. We don't want to see the vaccine mandates again, which is different from saying you want vaccines or not. A lot of people would say that it's not one extreme or the other. Great, have vaccines. Don't force me to get them, right? That's kind of the line for a lot of people. They're not saying I'm not against vaccines. I'm against you saying that I have to take it or I get fired from my job. That's the line that a lot of people say was crossed. And there's also the big question around like the mask mandates where everybody had to wear face masks, and it turns out there was no scientific justification for that. In fact, if you read the boxes of a lot of those face masks, they'll even just say they don't protect against like viruses or anything like that, meaning the entire thing had no scientific basis. And you had kids in school having to wear these things for like 6-8 hours every single day. Was that legal? Was that justified? A lot of people are saying never again. And a lot of people say that without criminal investigations, we risk having it happen again. And so that's the argument on that side. Seymour Butts, you're saying, Josh, even if Fauci is pardoned, he can still be questioned. Yeah, and so especially when it comes to Congress, that's what they're saying. Not just with Fauci, but even with the January 6th committee. You might remember, of course, Congress had even recommended criminal charges against like Liz Cheney. Remember that? They're saying that even though Joe Biden pardoned these people at the federal level, meaning Congress in its investigations will probably not result in any kind of federal charges. It could still result in state-level charges. I mean, on that point, remember the letter I just showed you from the Louisiana Attorney General. They're actually using findings from a congressional report to bring state-level charges. And so Congress, they can still investigate. And if they find things that are in violation of state law, states can still bring charges. So we can see that. But even outside of criminal charges, a lot of people say the investigations are also important because the investigations, and even if they can't go to jail for it, the investigations are important to make sure that a lot of these things just never happen again. And there might also be people who were involved on the sidelines who are not like big public figures. And those people who were involved on the sidelines, maybe they committed criminal charges. Remember, Biden didn't pardon everybody. He just pardoned kind of the big public figures. And I think, frankly, imagine if Biden was leaving office and he just starts pardoning all these people whose names nobody ever heard before. It would have looked kind of weird, right? It would have looked weird. And so he only pardoned kind of the most public, big figures, and then a lot of like criminals and murderers and stuff like that. He commuted their sentences. Let's see here. Seymour Butts, you also added, Josh, have you heard some of Elon's team are being persecuted by the left? Can you comment? There's one in particular on Elon's team who is facing some, criminal pushback and so on, and not even criminal, it's just character assassination. There was one individual on Elon Musk's team, and people went and dug up information on him. Wired magazine, they basically got information from somebody, and they published the identities of all these like 19, 20-something-year-old kids. I'm old enough now to say they're kids. All these 19-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds, and basically saying that, they're saying Elon Musk hired a bunch of young wizards, right? These kids who were fresh out of college or whatever, or even fresh out of high school, and with 150 plus IQs, like geniuses, and they're going around questioning government officials and saying who should be fired or not. They found one of these individuals, and forgive me for this, but they said that his pseudonym was Big Balls. And if you watch a lot of the mainstream media, they're having a field day about his nickname, and they're alleging this individual had made like one racist statement against Indians, and there's a big argument now over that racist statement and whether he should be fired for it. The individual was in fact fired from DOGE. He has now been rehired in one of the key positions under the State Department. So Big Balls is back in action. And personally, look, if you want to hold everybody, this is my take, if you want to hold everybody accountable for racist things they said on the internet, I would allege that every single person who ever made a negative comment about white people should also be fired. Because racism goes both ways. Any single person, anyone who made a single negative comment about men, which according to the civil rights law would still be civil rights violation, right? Anybody, especially if you're a government official, anybody who made a negative comment or discriminating statement against men, anybody who made a discriminating statement against straight people, which would still be sexual discrimination, any person who made discriminating comments against white people should be held to the exact same level of scrutiny if they want to hold this individual accountable for making one racist statement. I think that if you do not hold kind of equal justice under the law, if you don't fire every single official, every single government employee on those exact same grounds, then you are discriminating by allowing some people to keep their jobs and firing others. I don't think there should be a double standard on this if they want to really handle it like that, right? I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, Seymour, you're cracking me up. Yeah, because, the narrative coming out was that racism is a social economic thing, and it's fine to be racist if the person is in violation of social economic discrepancies. Ridiculous. That's not according to law. The Civil Rights Act would say otherwise. And actually what Trump is doing right now is going back to the Civil Rights Act, and he's actually looking to criminally charge people for civil rights violation on those grounds. And so it's not just me saying that. In fact, that is the basis of him purging departments of DEI initiatives, because he's saying the DEI initiatives were in violation of the Civil Rights Act, meaning they're in violation of the Constitution. So, again, forgive everybody. Forgive everyone, or fire everyone. Do one or the other, but don't do it one side or the other, because that is discrimination. To my point, I think people have become overly sensitive ninnies, and we need to quit making such a big deal about this stuff. Yeah, anybody has, you want to make fun of my mutt background, go ahead. I think it's funny. I don't get offended by this stuff. And I hope we can all go back to the days where a lot of us were a lot less offended by this kind of stuff. I think it's funny. I think we should be able to joke about this stuff again. Why make such a big deal about it? It's not the end of the world. I grew up in the days where we used to say, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. You know what I mean? Another question here. Ann Ice, you're saying, how can a pardon be issued before a person is charged with a crime? Yeah, that is one of the big questions with Biden and the way he did these pardons. Joe Biden, so the background of this, right? Joe Biden, the first time he did this was for his son, Hunter Biden. Joe Biden pardoned Hunter for any potential crimes going all the way back to like 2014, I believe. And this includes things that he was never charged with. People are saying, well, why back to 2014? He's not being charged with anything from 2014. Why are you doing that? People are talking about Burisma and so on. Joe Biden, on his part, says that he believes that his family because Joe Biden then pardoned basically most of his family members using that same method. Joe Biden alleged that he needs to protect his family because he's saying that his family is being politically targeted, that this is politicized justice. Biden criticized politicized justice, and he's saying that, look, I'm not going to have my family dragged through investigations and criminal investigations and congressional investigations and everything else for the next who knows how long, just because you want to get political revenge. And so he pardoned his whole family to protect them from any of that. Now, on his part, look, I would argue it is political. The only reason any of us care about Hunter Biden is because he's Joe Biden's son. That is true. Frankly, in any other timeline, Hunter Biden would be kind of like John McAfee. Remember John McAfee, the guy in charge of McAfee Security? John McAfee's life was kind of more crazy than Hunter Biden. Right? John McAfee was wild, folks. He was actually one of the first video interviews I did, by the way, before I had Crossroads. He was doing drugs while I was trying to interview him. John McAfee was crazy. But John McAfee was like a libertarian hero, right? You know, libertarians like him. So Hunter Biden's kind of similar. I think the only reason people care about Hunter Biden is, again, because he's the son of the president. Frankly, the politicization is kind of true. At the same time, though, people were saying, well, how can you do a pardon like that? How can you just pardon people for any potential crimes and they've not been charged yet? The historical precedence to that goes back to Richard Nixon. He was pardoned after he left office. Remember, he gave the peace signs, I am not a crook. And he gets on his helicopter and flies away into the sunset, right? He was also pardoned in a kind of sweeping way with the intent, it seems, to end the whole Watergate scandal and the investigations he was facing. He wasn't being charged. That was the end of it. You know what I mean? And that, again, the pardon was to protect him from any potential investigations. And so that's kind of the legal basis Biden used. And then after Hunter, after his family, Biden then pardoned a lot of other people using that same method. Fauci, Liz Cheney, and a lot of others, also to protect them from what they regard as politicized justice. And that is the narrative they're going with, right? They're saying we need to protect ourselves from politicized justice. And that is kind of the same narrative Trump has used as well. He's saying you guys are politically targeting me, the justice system has been weaponized, and both sides are now saying the justice system has been weaponized, but the Democrats are also saying the justice system has not been weaponized, and so Trump can't investigate it, right? They're kind of playing both sides of that narrative. And they're kind of saying they kind of don't really support what Biden did either, right? That's the narrative they're going with. On that part, it can still be debated whether that type of pardon can hold up. There are some people suggesting that the pardons Biden made, because it kind of was a novel way of doing pardons, it is possible a judge could overturn it, meaning some of those people may still face criminal investigations. And I would assume that state-level investigations and even congressional investigations, if they find something really massive, we could potentially see a reevaluation of whether those pardons actually hold up. But I personally think it would be on the weight of the issue. It would have to be something large enough for people to really demand that. Otherwise, I don't think they'll bother looking into it. And it also brings up the question of maybe Trump will want to, Trump, look at him, look at his family members, look at his entire first administration cabinet. Almost all of them were investigated. How many of Trump's close allies were not either criminally investigated or called in to testify before Congress as part of the investigations? A lot of them were. The only ones who were not were the ones who came out against Donald Trump and kind of joined the old, kill Caesar moment at the end of it all. You know what I mean? Almost all of them were criminally investigated or had to be involved in some way in prosecutions. And so maybe Trump at the end of this administration, he's also going to want to keep that in place and pardoned him and pardoned his family and pardoned everybody else in his administration so they also don't face criminal charges. And maybe this will just be the new normal for things going forward. That is also totally possible, because looking at the way things are going right now, he might want to do that, frankly. You know what I mean? Let's see here. Another question. Down to Farnham, you're saying also these people are not immune to civil lawsuits. That is true. So we talked about federal charges, we talked about state charges. The other big thing is individuals. And this is the way it could actually turn out. If, for example, a mother in any state in the U.S. whose child had to wear a face mask every day, and maybe that child suffered some kind of injury from that face mask, they could potentially make a civil lawsuit against the people who brought those mask mandates, even if those people were pardoned. It is also possible, if there is evidence of wrongdoing, or maybe Trump removes the legal immunity of vaccine companies because they're given immunity, for the most part. It's a separate legal process, right, if you have vaccine injury. But if somebody suffered injury from the COVID shots and they allege that, you guys forced us to take this, they may seek criminal charges against the people who forced them to take them, even if those people were, given immunity. Now, that probably will not result in jail time, right? Civil charges usually don't result in jail time, but civil charges do often result in very large lawsuits. And you could also expect to see maybe civil rights cases. You could see, for example, you violated my civil rights. You could see people suing, for example, with class action lawsuits. And as the investigations move forward and as they uncover possible wrongdoing, I think even outside of the state level stuff, it's very likely you could see people seeking their own kind of legal recourse. And so there's going to be probably a lot of that. The federal pardons do not protect them from that either. And frankly, I think there are a lot of people who are very mad, still about a lot of that. So we'll see. Sup Snap, you're saying, Josh, do you think Trump will abolish the IRS? He might. He hasn't done it yet, you know what I mean? It's a big question, right? So let's talk about the IRS a little bit. Income tax, federal income tax, used to not exist in the United States. The IRS was created around the same time as the constitutional amendment. What was it, I think it was 1913, or around that time. We got three things. We got the Federal Reserve, right? Yay, Federal Reserve. We got the IRS, and we got the again, constitutional amendments that changed the American laws to allow us to have federal income tax. Those all happened around the same time. And when they created federal income tax, they needed to have an enforcement bureau to handle that. And so the IRS basically exists right alongside federal income tax. I think Trump would not be able to get rid of the IRS unless they also got rid of federal income tax. And look, the reality of it is they may reduce the IRS. They might reduce the number of jobs. Maybe they'll have them focus on, financial crimes, like, for example, if businesses are hiring illegal immigrants or if there's international financial fraud. Maybe they'll work on that stuff. The current reshuffling of jobs, the IRS agents being sent to work on border security stuff, it's mostly in that kind of stuff, right? They're looking for like financial fraud or money laundering or money for human trafficking or criminal networks and that kind of stuff. Which hey, good for them, right? I actually would support criminal investigations on the financial side like that, especially if it's human trafficking or drug trafficking, right? They might keep that in place. But they're not going to I don't think they're going to get rid of the IRS entirely unless they get rid of federal income tax. Trump has created the ERS, the External Revenue Service, to go after, trade deficits and tariffs and the whole 9 yards for other countries and make sure they're actually paying the money they're supposed to pay. just like the IRS goes after us to make sure we're paying the money that they say we're supposed to pay, you know what I mean, and holding us accountable if we don't. The same thing is now being enacted globally against other countries. The other side of this also is Trump. He has talked about this. Elon Musk has talked about this. They've talked about reducing the amount of laws around taxes and all these different things you have to kind of navigate through. And some people would argue, a lot of big corporations, they actually want that big stack of laws because they have the legal departments that can handle it. But the average business does not. And so this actually does more harm to the smaller businesses or the potential rising competitors to the big businesses. Because a lot of big businesses, they have to have entire departments for compliance. They have compliance departments where there's so many regulations and so many government agencies and bureaus and crazy amounts of laws, and they just create new ones all the time, and some of them kind of look like they contradict each other. The ability to navigate that is crazy difficult, to the extent that some would argue you almost cannot do big business without violating something. You can always face some kind of charge. And then you get into the realms of like international business. Look at Facebook and look at Twitter or X. Look at them and the fines they're facing from other countries. And that's despite the fact they have massive compliance bureaus. It's very hard to navigate. And so, in terms of the international stuff, that's a whole other story. But in terms of the domestic stuff, what they're talking about is reducing the amount of regulations, especially on taxes. And Trump has also talked about creating a type of online portal for Americans to file their taxes. And so you won't have to use an external tax filing service. I use that kind of stuff. It makes things a lot easier. You can use these kind of external services, and they help you with compliance, and they cost a lot of money still. They're saying, why don't we just make that a service through the federal government? And if they do that, then you probably are going to have a lot less issues with the IRS and all that stuff too. And so they might just need fewer people because we'll have a simplified tax code. There's a lot of talk going around. They're even talking about having simplified tax tiers that will just make the whole thing a lot easier. And so basically what I'm saying is they're probably not going to get rid of the IRS entirely, or maybe they'll fold it into another bureau at most. But we will have they are talking about having a simplified tax code and a more simplified method of filing your taxes. Mind's mouth, you're saying, I'm not racist, I'm prejudiced. There is a difference. Look, the irony is, America is probably one of the least racist countries on the face of the planet. You want to see racism? Go to literally any other country on earth. And they will allege, we're not racist, and then ask them what they think of like any other racial group, and you will hear some of the most racist things you've ever heard. You know what I mean? Like, other countries are crazy racist. Especially when we get into kind of like the more, ethnically solid countries. Try going to South Korea, for example. Try going to China. You want to see real racism? Go to China. And a lot of people hate Americans too. I don't know if we count as a race or not, but a lot of people hate Americans. I would call that kind of racist. You know what I mean? I don't think there's anything wrong with being proud of your race. And I don't know why this has become such like a big issue. I think being proud of your race means you value your culture. And I see nothing wrong with that, right? I can tell you, on kind of just an honest level, growing up in, I come from a mixed cultural background. I used to kind of get bothered by it because I felt I didn't really have like my own culture. You know what I mean? And so when you're mixed race, you kind of have to pick a culture. It's kind of weird, right? And so like I kind of identify with my white family, you know what I mean? Because I like the culture. But I also really identify with my Hawaiian family because in my dad's side of the family, like Hawaiian culture was our main culture. My dad, all of his sisters, they grew up in Hawaii. I grew up doing hula. I did hula. We actually performed even, doing like smaller shows and stuff. Me and my cousins and my brother, we did like the drums, the tuete drums and so on. Like, that was a culture I grew up with. I love it. I value my culture. I think the culture is great. I appreciate my culture, and I also believe that other people should appreciate their cultures as well. I think you should cherish your culture. And I think the idea that you would call that, bad is crazy. I think white people should be allowed to be proud of their culture. And I think the fact that this has been so demonized is absolutely ridiculous. Italian culture is fantastic. Irish culture is fantastic. British culture is good. I'm just joking. I'm joking. I think people should value these things. And again, I think it's stupid that people have been told they're not allowed to do that. I think it's absolutely stupid. I do hope people can value their cultures more. And I think valuing your culture also doesn't mean that you can't value other cultures. Folks, if you ever watched my early shows, you might have seen all the books in like my bookshelf. I have tons of books. I have folk tales and stories from just about every culture on earth. I love reading folk tales from different countries. And again, I think people should value these things more. Aaron Shimano, you're saying the way Trump is suggesting making Canada the 51st state sounds to me like half-jokingly saying, why not? But living in Canada at the moment, I can say that a surprising number of people are seriously thinking Trump wants to force Canada to be 51st. I can't tell if he's joking anymore, to be honest. Like, I completely thought Trump was joking. At first I was like, yeah, that'll never happen. If Canada becomes the 51st state, Canada at best is kind of a purple. It would be a purple state. You know what I mean? Canada is right now swinging a bit more conservative. But the important thing to remember, the conservative Democrat division in Canada is not the same as the conservative Democrat division in America. The Canadian left wing is much more socialist. And the Canadian conservatives, they're not like American Republicans. They might not believe in like gun rights. They might not support a lot of the things American Republicans do. And so they would actually represent kind of a different party almost. And if you wanted to merge the two, you would have to see kind of a merging of the political parties. And I don't know if the Canadian Democrats would align with the American Democrats. And I don't know if the Canadian Conservatives would align with the American Conservatives. I think they're a bit too different. That said, who knows? Maybe Trump would find a way to do it. I don't know. Aaron, do you think the Canadian Conservatives would get behind like the MAGA movement and Trump? Or do you think they'd want to have almost like a third party? If we did bring Canada in, it might result in third parties. Who knows? But we'll see. I do think a lot of people, including myself, are kind of wondering now. We're all kind of seriously thinking, geez, could Canada become the 51st state? I think a lot of people, even here, are kind of thinking about it now. I think what's going to end up happening is this, though. We'll have to see whether Trump is serious about the tariffs. Because here's what's going to happen. If Trump keeps the tariffs on Canada, it will decimate their economy. And Canadians are serious about when they say that they could not survive that. If their economy is frankly decimated by tariffs, will they still want to join America, or will they want to look for like other business deals with other countries they can trade with? I don't know. The other side you're going to have to look at is the effect it will have on Canada if America renews domestic energy production. Because one of the biggest exports from Canada is oil, oil and timber, right? If America brings that domestic, if we have domestic oil production and natural gas and fracking, which they're right now trying to bring back, all of those, that alone will decimate the Canadian economy. That alone will very deeply hurt the Canadian economy. And they're even now saying that even American timber is not, we might not need Canada for it if they expand it. Canada, again, has way more timber than probably anyone other than Russia, right? So we'll see about that. But even if Canada is like limited to like timber and maybe some smaller exports, your economy, the economy there is going to be under a lot of pressure. And so if they start feeling that kind of pressure, they may have to consider, well, geez, maybe we should become the 51st state. And I think that things will change a lot when Trump actually does do some of these things. It could change a lot of things, actually. So, I think we'll have to see. A lot of us right now, we're kind of thinking maybe it won't ever happen, even though Trump is saying he's serious about it. But things could change when it comes to the financial side. So again, we'll see. That said, folks, thank you so much for being here. Join me again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And again, that said, please share this video. Give us a like. It helps us quite a bit. And as always, folks, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.